You ever look at the market and just think it's complete chaos, right? Totally random, totally unpredictable. But what if I told you it's not? What if, underneath all that noise, there's a hidden rhythm, a pattern that repeats itself over and over again? What if there's a map to all this madness? Well, let's take a look.
I mean, this is the classic painful mistake. We've all been there. You see the headlines, the market's soaring, everyone's making money, you get that FOMO and you jump in right at the top. And then when the panic sets in and prices start crashing, we sell out of fear, locking in those losses. It's this emotional roller coaster that traps so many people. But you know what? It really doesn't have to be that way.
The key to breaking that cycle is to understand that the economy isn't random at all. It actually moves in seasons, just like the year. You've got the cold of winter, the thaw of spring, the heat of summer, and the cool down of fall. And in each of these seasons, money flows in a predictable way between different kinds of assets. Once you learn to see these seasons, you can start moving with the flow instead of constantly fighting against it.
Okay, so this right here, this is our roadmap. Think of this as the weather forecast for the economy. As you can see, there are 4 distinct quadrants. If we start up in the top left and go clockwise, we have the difficult times, or khahan. Then comes the money printing phase, bam tien. Then you get the heat of inflation, lam fa. And finally, the tightening phase, or hut tien, where money gets sucked out of the system. Understanding where we are on this map at any given time, well, that changes everything.
So let's start our journey in winter, or as it's called here, muadong. This is a time of economic difficulty, a period where the main goal isn't really to get rich quick, but to protect what you already have. It's time to find some shelter from the storm.
So what does an economic winter actually feel like? Well, the central banks have cranked interest rates way up to fight off inflation. This is that tightening phase, what the MAC calls hut tien. They're basically taking a giant vacuum and sucking money out of the system. So borrowing money is expensive, businesses slow down, people get laid off, and the whole vibe is just difficult. Everything feels tight and uncertain.
So here's the billion-dollar question. When fear is everywhere and the economy is freezing over, where does money go? It runs for safety. It looks for a place to hibernate or trudung. And historically, the absolute best place for that has been gold. It's the one asset that tends to shine when everything else is struggling. But hey, the good news is winter doesn't last forever. After the deep freeze comes the thaw. Spring and summer, or muasun and muha. These are the seasons of recovery, of explosive growth, and of massive opportunity. And it all gets kicked off by one single thing. And that catalyst is bum thin, literally pumping money into the system. To fight that winter recession, central banks completely flip the script. They slash interest rates to near zero and turn on the money printers, flooding the economy with cheap cash. They want people and businesses to borrow, to spend, and to invest again. This is the warmth that melts the ice and brings about spring. And this slide just nails what happens next. They call it the Great Rotation. You can almost picture a dam breaking. As soon as that cheap money hits the system, capital doesn't need to hide in safe places like gold anymore. It comes flooding out, desperately searching for better returns in riskier things. And that's the moment the next big boom cycle begins. So where's all that money racing to? This is prime time for what we call risk-on assets. Stocks and crypto become the absolute superstars. Just think back to that wild go-to-the-moon period in 2020 and 2021. That was a perfect textbook economic summer, completely fueled by the massive money printing we saw during the pandemic. It's when fortunes can be made, and fast. But you know how it goes. Every great party eventually has to wind down. That hot summer growth can't last forever, and eventually we start to see signs of excess, and we drift into autumn, or muatu. This is a really tricky transitional season. The leaves are beautiful, but they're falling, and the market is showing all the signs that it's getting tired. So how do you tell the difference between the peak of summer and the start of autumn? Well, in summer, everything just feels amazing. The economic reports are glowing, companies are posting record profits, and every headline is positive. But in autumn, a new problem sneaks in: inflation. All that money printing starts to make the economy overheat, and the central banks start whispering about raising rates again. The music is starting to fade. Now, as stocks and crypto start to run out of steam, that big pool of money looks for one last dance. And very often, that final party is in real estate. It's a real, tangible asset, and people often see it as a safe place to be when inflation is picking up. We saw a perfect example of this in early 2022 with that crazy speculative fever around the Thutium land auctions, right before the cycle turned and winter came knocking again. All right, so we've journeyed through all 4 seasons. We've seen the whole cycle play out. Now for the big question. How do we turn all this knowledge into a practical tool, into an investor's compass that we can actually use to navigate the markets? It really comes down to 2 super important ideas. And this is the most important one. Investment is about expectation. Let me say that again. It's about what you expect to happen, not what's happening right now. You don't get paid for investing in yesterday's good news. Everyone already knows about it, and it's already priced in. You have to be thinking about what's coming next. By the time the news is telling you the economy is booming, the smart money is already quietly packing its bags for autumn.
And that leads us to the second key idea, the dim-un, or the inflection point. This is that critical moment of change, the transition between the seasons. It's when winter starts to thaw and you can feel the first hints of spring, or when the peak summer heat finally breaks and you feel that first cool breeze of autumn. It's not the middle of the season that makes you money, it's being able to spot the turn. And honestly, that's probably the most valuable skill you can have as an investor.
So here it is, the entire framework, the whole game plan, all on one slide. This table is your compass. Let's run through it real quick. In winter, when money's tight and things are difficult, the priority is gold. Then comes spring and summer, fueled by money printing and hot growth. That's when you want to be in stocks and crypto. And finally, in autumn, when inflation shows up and things start to slow down, the last move is into real estate. See, it's a clear, simple, and repeatable pattern. So why does all this matter so much, especially right now? Because understanding this cycle shows you where the real opportunities are. As one analyst put it so well, when you recognize you're in the late stages of winter, or the very early days of spring, you realize that this is the last chance for us to accumulate as many cheap assets as possible before that next summer boom arrives. And that brings us to the final and most important question. A question for you. You have the map now. You understand the 4 seasons. You know how the money flows. So take a good look at the world around you. Look at interest rates, at inflation, at how people are feeling. Which season do you think we are in right now?